What's going on, guys? Today I want to show you how to handle a form in React. This is something you'll have to do in pretty much any application. A user usually needs to fill out a small form to even use an application to sign up or sign in. So I have a basic form here with two inputs for username and password. And in the browser, inputs have their own internal state. This will keep track of things like if an input is in focus, whether a user is typing, what the user has typed, etc. And React has its own state. And we want to sync that input state with React, making React the single source of truth. So to do that, we're going to bring in useState. And we'll use this to keep track of both inputs. So we'll call that state form inputs. We'll set form inputs. And then our initial state will be an object. And the keys of this object are going to represent the different inputs. And we actually want to match the ID of the inputs with the keys in the state. And I'll show you exactly why in a minute. So we have username and password. So that'll be username, and we'll start that state with an empty string because we want to start off with an empty form, and password. Now we want to put the user's input into that state. And React gives us synthetic events, which are basically a wrapper around native events, but they work the same in different browsers. And one of these synthetic events is the Onchange event. And that'll get fired every time an event occurs in an input. And then we can pass in an event handler function, which we'll call input changed handler. And then we'll do this for both inputs. And we'll write that function up here. Now, because this is a synthetic event, we get the event object passed in by default. This is where we'll update the state. It's recommended that you keep state immutable, meaning you don't want to update the state directly. In a bigger application, your state can be updated from different areas, and you want to ensure that you're updating the right old state. So you'll pass in the old state and then update that. So we'll make a const of updated inputs, which will be an object. And to bring in the old state, we'll use the spread operator and form inputs. And then we can safely update the state here. So we'll use the syntax of selecting a key in brackets and then putting the value. So for the key, we're going to use that event object, which has a target property. And that target property is the element that the event was called upon. So for us, that's the input element. And to specify which input element, that's where our ID comes into play. So that's also why I wanted to match the state with the ID. So event target.id, and then the value will be event target.value. And then to set the state, we'll do our set form inputs and pass in this updated inputs. Now that will work for both inputs. And lastly, we want to handle the form submission. And for that, we have another synthetic event called onSubmit, which we can put right in this form tag. And we'll pass that another event handler function. We'll call that submit handler. We'll write that up here. And we also get that event passed in. Now, by default, when you submit a form, it causes the page to re-render. You typically don't want this in React, especially if you're not jumping through hoops to make your state persistent. So we'll call event.prevent default. I'll keep the page from re-rendering. And now we can just access the user's input by accessing our state. So I'll just do an alert here. Form inputs the name of our state. We'll say username. And form inputs.password. So we'll save that. Come to our form here. Fill out a username, password. Hit enter. See what I did there? Huh? I should probably stop making YouTube videos. That's all for today. Thank you for watching.